I'm Emily Lutzker.
And I'm Anna Camasia. Today, International Arrivals speaks with director, choreographer, and performer Miguel Alejandro Castillo, originally from Caracas, Venezuela. Welcome.
Welcome, Miguel.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So great to have you on our podcast. Thank you.
Yes, indeed.
You know, when we were looking at your work in preparation for this podcast, we realized that we saw loud and clear when it was at New York Live Arts. And what's interesting is I remember watching it and I remember thinking, Emily and I had just started talking about international arrivals as a thing. And I remember thinking, this would be perfect for us to spotlight or somehow, showcase it somewhere. And so perhaps we'll start there. Perhaps you could briefly describe that work for our audience.
And of course, first getting used to this beautiful voice through the microphone.
Oh, it's excellent.
Yeah, Loud and Clear. Loud and Clear was a piece that I did at New York Live Arts, and it's a dance theater piece that imagines a fictional folkloric festivity to celebrate the ongoing construction of the Venezuelan diaspora. So I worked very closely with my collaborator and dear friend, Daniel de Barrito, who is also an immigrant in Spain. And we were just trying to imagine what happens when folklore moves also with us. So it was a very beautiful researching the things that we remember from where we are from, the things that we want to continue carrying with us, as well as how those conjugate with the present experience that we both have, and what does that yield culturally, and how can that be in support of the immigrant experience. So that piece looked like a series of vignettes exploring different elements of that. And yeah, I had a live musician. Daniela was composing on stage, a live performer. And we also worked with Lexi Hota, who is a visual artist, also an immigrant in the United States, to create masks, like large masks, and this kind of very luscious costumes.
And then no costumes. I remember that part.
That too. To describe it a little bit for the listeners, it looked like an empty space with 3 long pieces of fabric in the middle of the stage. We used projections in the back that reflected different thinking, different thoughts of what our life has been as immigrant artists in different spaces and the things that we remember. The color scheme was black and red and white, and just very colorful masks.
Yeah, I remember the masks, and I remember the beautiful hanging fabric. I think it's really interesting, this idea of what you carry with you. You know, we've talked to people who think about objects or food, but folklore is something else, like the stories that you carry or that are inherited through generations. So I think that's a very interesting approach to how you refigure your place in a new setting.
Yeah, totally.
And I like this idea of carrying them, because you have this sense watching that show too of that they are in your body.
Yeah. That makes me think that really the spark of this project, I've been working with notions of what is diasporic imagination and what does future folklore looks like in a world that is rapidly changing and globalized. And it started because I went to an event at this bar called Barbes, organized by a Venezuelan musician named Mafer Bandola. And she organizes this space called Pipiris Nights, which is the Venezuelan folkloric tradition of joropo being done in New York City, in Brooklyn. And I grew up in a family that I spend my summers in the plains, which is where this music, this festivity comes from. So I have a deep relationship to joropo. And I remember going to the bar and just seeing the Venezuelan community at large embracing this particular form that is very specific to a specific region in the country. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid in the city and I would talk about joropo or that, it could be looked down upon because it's more in the rural sense, like there's an otherness inside of the country. But once you go through an immigration experience, I think that your notions of the limits of where your community ends expand. So now all of a sudden I was in a room full of very different people from different regions of Venezuela, embracing this tradition as ours. And what I saw was, particularly in the dancing, like it has a very specific kind of dancing, joropo, but I saw elements of New York, I saw elements of Caracas, I saw elements of other regions in Venezuela kind of starting to mold into something that was different than what I know of joropo. So the exercise that I was doing with my friend Daniel, I was like, what if we imagined some festivities of Venezuela and imagine them through the process of traveling and immigrating? What would they become once they arrive to a new context? And kind of, exploring what that was.
Absolutely, because those stories are always changing and, shifting as you experience other things in wherever you are.
Totally.
Yeah.
It just makes me think, we were talking about how so much of this podcast, we talk about notions of home and what does it mean to be home and what does it mean to belong in a place. And I think about the neighborhoods of New York, I say like, well, I'm a downtown girl, not like those uptown people or, or something. Well, that's like in Queens. But if I go to another country, then I'm a New Yorker, and everything, from whatever happens in Staten Island to whatever happens in the Bronx, that's all part of me. And so having this experience at the bar where there's all of these different cultures, from Venezuela, but different parts of Venezuela, but they're all somehow, you embrace them when you're not home.
Yeah.
It's totally relational and kind of is like an accordion, right? And if you're home, it is very specific, but as you move away, it grows with you.
Yeah. And as other people from your home experience immigration, then that in and of itself becomes a galvanizing experience.
Sure, of course.
Absolutely.
So we might do different dances, we might have different accents, we might come from different places, but the experience of immigrating to a particular context already unifies difference.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, and home and your immigration experience, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your migration story.
I first traveled from Caracas to Vancouver Island when I was 17 through a program called United World College, UWC, which is like an utopic educational program that I remember the slogan is to make education a force to unite people, cultures, and nations for a peace and sustainable future. So it was essentially like they selected people from all over the world and they brought them to a school, usually in a rural space. This was in Mitchosin, which is 45 minutes away from Victoria. And we lived in the most beautiful campus you can imagine, by the ocean, in the forest. And we talked about peace and sustainability. So it was through an educational opportunity that I left, and it was a full scholarship, and really, really transformed my life. It really did. Thank you, UWC. And then via that program, I ended up coming to Vermont, to Middlebury College, to study dance and theater, also through a scholarship. And then I have continued studying here. I did my master's at Smith College. So it was kind of following where my desire was coming and where the opportunities were opening.
Mm-hmm. Were you studying dance and theater in Caracas?
I was, yeah. I was part of a theater collective called El Chichón, which was a theater program from the university that specialized in creating work for kids, like developing or tackling taboos inside of a children's community. So it was like teenagers working with younger audiences. And then dance was more of a discovery in when I came to the US. I've always had my aunts, get me out dancing at the weddings, and that's how I learned how to use my hips. So I've always been a dancer, but more career-oriented since I arrived to the US. That's just kind of the institutional migration story. I think the migration stories have a lot of nuance and little moments of, like I can remember sitting on a plane and writing on my journal, like it was, I think, seat 16A. And I was like looking out the window and seeing the Caribbean below me and understanding that I was going through a process that I would not be able to understand for a really long time. And now it's just an ongoing process. Once you leave where you're from, you're already experiencing that process. And I don't think we come to understand that story ever. I think we come to understand our relationship to that story, but to understand that story itself, it's just so massive.
And ongoing, as you say, it's a process. And so I think it's hard to reflect on something as you're experiencing it.
Yeah.
I know thematically your work deals with migration and kind of displacement. And I don't mean displacement, sort of forced displacement, but displacement of like in a new space.
Yeah.
Do you think that the idea of migration has also affected your sense of the body and how the body feels, moves? The most obvious is this notion of migration and then the movement of the body. But I wondered how your understanding of migration might affect how you think about the body.
I mean, it has affected it greatly. My perception of the body has been changed by my experience of immigrating. And one of the things that I'm really trying to pay attention in my research was the kind of language that I'm being exposed to from the fact that I am an immigrant artist in the United States. Every time I need to fill in a form for, let's say, the artist visa that I'm in, or for any other procedure, I'm run by a series of questions that make me question, or have the capacity of making me question who I am. The questions are really criminalizing. The language that is used is quite severe. They don't ask you, like, what are your aspirations? They ask you, like, are you involved in, crime? So having to contend with a specific language that forces me to imagine myself in a position that I'm not, or in a position, or in a way of who I am not. I'm an artist. I'm a working artist. Creates a very pervasive process that requires diligence in separating myself from it. Like, I know I have to fill in this form, but how do I make a shield to protect my body and my mind from the language that is being used against me?
Yes.
And, that's in relation to bureaucracy, but that also happens in relation to the news. It also happens in relation to, like, even the grants that I apply to, there is a languaging that starts molding my sense of identity and therefore my sense of the body. So a very specific moment in my story, I think this is 2019, I was transitioning between two visas and kind of like assessing. I wanted to continue working as an artist in the US because I've already connected with beautiful community of people, and I was assessing what was the best path to make those dreams come true. And then I was in between, like, the form of the TPS, which is temporary protected status, came through for Venezuelans in that time because the US government had recognized the humanitarian crisis going on and had allowed for, this temporary protected status to happen. And I remember filling out that application. And from the moment you fill the application, you become like captive labor. You're not allowed to leave the country. And you can imagine, as a mover and as a choreographer, mobility is a value of mine. It really is a way in which I see the world and in which I find myself inside of. And I just remember being on a train and calling my sister, letting her know that I had finished the application, and just feeling like deeply, deeply devastated.
Almost trapped here.
Yeah, and I was just like worried that because I was deciding to pursue a career and wanting to, like, work in the environment that I was working in, I was putting a limitation on myself, or actually the system was putting a limitation on myself, or of accessing my family. That December, my father was diagnosed with cancer, and I just like encountering that, like, if his process wasn't going well, I would love to travel, and that would mean letting go of the application that I was going through. And it just what the immigrant experience does is that it immediately demands that you imagine precisely a shit ton of versions of who you are and where you might end up. Because you're like, if I make this decision, then I cannot travel. If I cannot travel, then this happens, and then this happens, and this other things happens. Or like, if I make the decision to travel, then I might not be able to return, and then I will stay there. And then and it's just, you just have to do that work so that when you are in one of those situations, of course, life does its thing. But if you allow yourself the imagination of all these versions of what might happen, then when you are in that situation, you're less surprised by it. So what it has done to my creative practice and mind is that I do operate, like, I feel like I am tracking like so many different versions of who I am. I mean, I am one person, but like the possible outcomes of that, like, and I'm tracking them all at once.
Yeah. Make you very aware of the choices that you make and the possible outcomes from those choices, good and bad.
Yeah.
But also the choices that you don't make. I mean, with this current administration, for example, there are choices being made for you.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know if you want to talk about it, but I know that recently you were supposed to go to Canada for a project. And then because of this administration, you decided not to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. I'm a performer with a wonderful choreographer named Faye Driscoll. And we collaborated on this project, I as a dancer and an insider of the piece, called Weathering. And Weathering is a piece that I love performing. I think it's a really like raw, and it just aligns so powerfully with the path that I have been on and my interests in the function of art inside of our society. And I get to perform it with a family that I'm like disgustedly in love with. I love everybody in this group so much. And we have this tour planned for Marseille, Athens, and Amsterdam, presenting this work that I love. And I was talking to my lawyers about, how they view the situation, and the consensus was, we just don't know.
Yeah.
So we cannot guarantee a safe return. So, and I had to make this decision within a week and a half, which the amount of stress and sorrow that I went through was like really, really hard. I think when I saw you a month ago, I was just coming from making that decision. And I mean, I just cried and got angry, and like in the process of making the decision again, I had to imagine like a billion versions of the outcomes of like, okay, if I get stuck outside, then who do I contact? Where do I work? What do I do? What kind of life do I have? Like it just
and
goes
what happens
into
to
like,
all your stuff?
And what happens to, like it was also like, oh, I would have to put my things in storage so I don't leave my roommate with that burden. Like it's just an insane amount of considerations to make and lives to imagine, because it's a decision that does not depend on me.
Yeah.
It depends on a system that is targeting me.
Yeah. And what did you decide?
I decided not to travel. So I'm staying here this summer. There is this beautiful educator from Brazil who wrote Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and he has this quote that says, "The oppressed, having internalized the image of the oppressor and adopted his guidelines, are fearful of freedom." So one of the things that I need to do, or that I have been doing, is, while I am buying into a system that is trying to terrorize me, I feel fearful of returning safely to the home I have built, even though I don't have intentions of being here. I just want to be able to work and continue my work with my artist visa, which I did for the purpose of traveling with this choreographer that I'm working for.
I remember in our event at Abrams Art Center, you talked about how your passport was so important and expensive, but it was one of the most valuable things you own, you said, and it offered you the freedom of movement, and between then and now, you've made the choice not to embrace that freedom because of what's happening.
Well, I will say that I made the choice to embrace that freedom because I am not giving someone else the possibility of choosing for me.
Yeah.
By saying, like when I come through the airport, I am giving that agency to somebody who I don't know, who might have had terrible breakfast, that day and might decide something.
Right.
And that's the fear. I think that is the fear. And I think that that's a really lovely way of putting it, is just that you're containing or you're controlling that freedom. And the freedom is to not put yourself in that position. And I think then, though, it is restrictive, and it's not restrictive by choice.
Exactly. Exactly.
Similar to the self-censorship stories that we're hearing.
We have the task to reframe what are those limitations and to not internalize that language and to really fight against it in a way that fulfills our communities,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And yes, my passport is the most expensive thing I own. Is like, I think I did the math once, just like looking at all the visas that I've had to apply to mostly for work or for studying. And it's around like $15,000 investment on that mobility. And that's, within the scheme of things is significant.
Right.
To then not be able to use it.
Right.
Yeah.
This brings up questions, though, of like this idea of self-censorship or freedom. I think about visibility and erasure of just, in a lot of diasporic contexts, there's often this play between invisibility and visibility of sort of bringing into visibility. And so I wondered if you could talk a little bit about, in your performances, you do use masks. And I think that's a play between both of those things. And wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you think your work plays with this sort of visibility, invisibility, or visibility erasure, and how the mask maybe functions in that or doesn't function in that.
I'm really interested in that. I think masks provide a space to fully reveal something that we might not be allowing ourselves to reveal because of how attached we are to our identities.
Or what you're being told your identity is.
Or what you're being told your identity is, exactly. So I work with masks because they provide a very rich space for navigating the internal landscape and for expressing it outwardly fully. And then I do work with ideas of hybridity, like what happens if you have a suit and then you only take like one arm off and then you see a human arm in this other body. And I think hybridity allows for this sense of magic to happen and possibility. So I think it opens up both the viewer and the performer to something unimaginable. And then there is also a process which is absolutely beautiful, which is a process of revelation. What happens when you reveal the humanity, or like not the humanity, what happens when you reveal the human underneath the mask?
Yes.
And that moment when you're like sensing the mask coming off of you, and I feel this like charge of like almost like each cell in my body saying, this is me, this is me, this is me, this is me, this is me. And then you take it off and then you have an identity that is fictional that you're holding in the mask. An identity and another identity, which is also fictional, which I'm holding in my body. So yeah, it's just like very, very powerful research.
And I think in some ways it ties back to your ideas of looking at folklore and carrying folklore forward, of sort of that future place and that past place.
Yeah.
I think that masks often are the transitional zone, or the transition between past and present, or the now and the then, or, ancestral connections and
100%. 100%. They provide a space of liminality, which
yes, exactly.
As immigrants, I think we all understand what that space, like from an airport, that's a liminal space.
Absolutely.
I am in my memories there and I'm in my memories here. That's also a liminal space. And so all of a sudden you put this costume that allows all of that to exist. You exist in this like very rich liminality that's full of potential. So in the piece that you saw, I was working with 3 folkloric characters, entities. A gecko, which is this like Andean character that carries a lot, and I found myself like always carrying a bag with the backpack and the thing, like I'm always carrying stuff with me.
Like Emily today.
Like Emily today, exactly. So it was a mixture of that.
The New York schlep.
Yes. With the Diablos de Yare, which is this particular Corpus Christi tradition that has like this like demon masks, like very colorful and very bright, and they perform to like the sounds of the drums, and it's like very transic and very beautiful. And then this other image, which is from Con la Matrona, which is this like beautiful, wonderful, welcoming lady, and she's an entity, a character, a very beautiful figure in the Calypso folklore in Venezuela. And so with my friend Daniela and Lexi, we decided to create one single entity, kind of like combining all of this and imagining the immigration story of this entity. And it resulted in this like all red lady. I have the mask right here. I don't know if you want to describe this mask. How would you describe this mask?
I would say it's a white papier-mâché mask with red lips and rosy cheeks and some eyelashes, and then these dangling red fabric that comes from the mask with these tassels of other colors.
Yeah, I mean, it has like eyelashes and...
Yes, definitely a lady.
A lady, yeah. So we created this lady who is in my imaginary, she welcomes the immigrant and mocks the victimization that sometimes we go through, and exposes it in a sensual and like powerful way. And I love dancing with this mask, and the dress is this like very bulky skirt, red skirt, that has like a bag, a belt, a shoe, like it has like all these objects as if I was like traveling with my things somewhere else. And it had pictures of everybody in my family and friends community that has migrated. So the bottom of the skirts had like all these memories of people going through something similar. So in my fiction, this lady would have opened up the doors of her home, which in this case is a country, and would have like cooked a meal, and we would have drank rum and danced the whole night long, you know?
Well, right. That's the fantasy of the immigration experience. You're welcome here.
Yeah.
You know, the real experience doesn't make you feel that way.
Yeah. Well, and it does. I think I have felt so welcomed in the United States. I really have. I have host families in every little time that I have stepped through. And when I say host families, I mean people that I love with all my heart. So I think the sorrow is that they are people who love deeply here, existing within a system that demands their hearts to shrink.
That's a beautiful way of putting it.
Yeah.
Because it's also about language, that you're not fitting into the systemic language necessarily. And so your experience is not one that is framed by the systemic language, but is framed by these experiences of how people treat you or what you talk about or feeling welcome in their homes. And so those are, you know, you're talking about versions of yourself and versions of the future. That's another version, I think.
Yeah, it is. It is. But yeah, I felt very well by the people. Absolutely welcomed. I love everybody around me. I really do.
You have a lot of love in you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and which brings out love in others. So talking about the future and back to your work a minute, you have something coming up. Well, coming up long term, you're working on with Abrams Art Center. Can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Yes. Well, it's a process. It's called El Momento. And I am really curious to develop a piece that studies notions of labor, anonymity, and immigration in relation to Times Square cartoon characters who share a similar experience than I do. So I have been working really hard for the last 3 years, creating an infrastructure to support that kind of research where everybody can feel safe and where everybody can be financially supported. And I'm working with an ethnographer named Carolina. And the idea is to be in dialogue with these workers and try to understand what's the cost and the value of the American dream. So like mixing notions of capitalism and entertainment and hybridity, again, like this big cartoon characters. So that's a project. So it will happen.
And they give you quite a long time to work on it and, research it, develop it, unfold it, and then perform it.
Yeah, well, I was very certain that this kind of project, because I really sensed the magnitude of it, that I wanted to create a really rich infrastructure for me to fully explore the ideas without a sense of precarity that can be often linked to this kind of artistic projects. So very gratefully, I've been working with Abram's team, creating the necessary conditions for that project to come to fruition in the most beautiful way it can. And it's been fantastic, and we're like really finding some momentum this year. So yeah, come check it out. Come check it out.
We definitely will.
Great. And that's will be presented 2027.
2027, yeah. I'm very excited and I'm very grateful to be able to do it. Something comes to mind in relation to the question you asked about the body and like how I understand myself and all of these versions. I do have a choreographic practice that I call the palimpsest. And the palimpsest is a practice of attention where I move nonstop. Is very much inspired by a choreographer I work with, a dear mentor, friend named Janine Durning. And the idea behind this process is that I start moving nonstop. You saw this at the show at Live Arts. And I start unearthing memories and things that my body has gone through. And I start visualizing very specifically elements of that memory. So for example, my body tends to go to Christmas or New Year's in Venezuela, which were very, very rich for me and like very full of imagery. And the practice is imagining, or like I see my father holding a glass of whiskey. And then in my body, I see the hand holding the glass and I see the condensation of the water. And then I try to bring that as immediately as possible to my movement. So it feels like a kind of very fast moving choreography that's full of these memories. And the idea behind this practice is that I get to understand that which I hold dear to my life, that which has been erased not by choice, and that which I am deciding to erase because it doesn't serve my empowerment. So yeah, that practice just makes its way to every work that I'm part of. You can imagine it. Images of like Rome come to mind. You see Rome and you see a palimpsest city. You see like civilization on top of civilization, like things that are buried.
Things that are erased and then rebuilt.
Yes. And then
erased.
vestiges of what's left.
Yes.
So,
and that sort of brings me to my question that I always ask, which is about the archive. And so if you think about the body as an archive, which is what you are describing in so many ways, of thinking about these expressions that have gone through your body, your family's body, I'm more interested in what disrupts the archive as sort of this official space. And so bodily movements, memories, those are things that disrupt our understanding of what an archive can be. And so I was curious as to what sorts of, do you think about your performances as a kind of archive for diasporic experience? Or is it more about your own memories, as you were talking about your own memories, and what is Venezuela to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are definitely an expression of my archive, my body of work. And I am, in the past few years, it's been very much related to my Venezuelan experience because it has been so immediate and so palpable for me. And it has been very personal. But right now with this project, with El Momento, I'm expanding that personal research onto like what are the implications it might have on a larger community, or like what materials it might yield in relation to other people. And although I am very close to my Venezuelan heritage and I draw from my experiences there, I'm also very interested in post-nationalism. What is the creative landscape or the imagination of going beyond what we understand of ourselves in relation to where we're from? Like, what is a post-nationalist dance about folklore?
Right.
What is
Right.
that?
Yeah.
And what are the invitations what are the openings it has?
Even thinking about that, like it just shifts a whole understanding of territory, of land, of where people are from, of histories, like just thinking about that slight shift in language and thinking affects so many things. Yeah.
Yeah. With my friend Daniela for this piece at New York Live Arts, we did imagine it. We were like, let's create, really trying to put aside the context in which we are right now.
Right.
Like, can we do both? Can we fully embrace it and see all the implication it has in relation to the system? And also, can we let go of our notions of ourself in relation to this ways of living that we did not decide to be part of? I was born with this passport. I did not decide on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Lots to think about.
A lot, yeah.
Yes.
Lots to think about there.
So what else is up for you on the horizon?
What else is up for me on the horizon? This hasn't been made public yet. But I mean, depending on when you
Secret information,
when you
you
share
heard it
this.
here first on the International Arrivals podcast.
On the International Arrivals podcast.
But I was selected as a fellow for doing this opera directing program at Juilliard. So I'll be at Juilliard for the year, working on my practice as an opera maker that I'm really excited about.
Fantastic.
This is also not public yet,
Okay.
but it's also very
Mum's the
exciting.
word.
We will see. In my practice as a choreographer, I have been working with my 93-year-old grandmother.
Oh, wow.
We did a dance film together. We have taken class together. She's discovered dance at age 88 through me. And we worked together on this opera in Vienna. We lived together, and like she was one of the main performers in this show. She was kind of a very key element inside that production. And I recently pitched to her, I was like, there's this fellowship that I think you should apply. Like the conditions are like working professionally for, I think 3 years or 2 years, and it has no age limit. And it's a really wonderful opportunity. You will get to work with me and just, developing your practice further. And she was like, sure, let's do it. And she wrote this like really beautiful application. And then she sent me this text recently saying, it's urgent that we speak. They called from Germany. It's good news. So she was selected as the Pina Bausch Fellow for this coming year.
Wow.
Yeah. So the plan is that hopefully she will travel to the US. We're gonna work April, May, and June together she's interested in practicing how to understand the language of trees and how to understand dance as a way of approaching death. Because she is 93. And then after that, she will travel to Germany and talk about the research that we did. It's amazing.
Wow. That is fabulous.
Oh, what a wonderful project. Yeah. Wonderful opportunity. Wonderful, to have that intergenerational connection.
Yeah, totally is. So yeah, and then my own projects, this El Momento performance piece that I'm creating will have a lot of weight and excitement for me this coming year. And also continuing touring with Faye Driscoll in this piece called Weathering. So, few things.
Fantastic.
Touring in the US, though.
Touring in the US. Well, I am hopeful. I am hopeful of possibilities there. Things change so quickly, and
yes, everything is unknown.
And I think there is a sense of making risky decisions with the right support. Like when you don't have, if you don't have money to pay for an immigration attorney, you might not be taking that risk.
Right.
But if you do a GoFundMe, which I might be doing soon, to like have to be, I think that we do need, there's this also really beautiful quote by Martin Luther King that says, "Those who love peace must organize as effectively as those who love war." So I think there is a sense of risk-taking inside of a system that is oppressing, and that risk-taking being supported by resources and community, so that we can all feel like in our power. So I'm hopeful that company's traveling to Tokyo in October, and I have my fingers crossed.
Oh, that would be fabulous.
Yes, that would be amazing. You can't pass that up.
I know. I hope not, but if it does, I'll figure it out.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to talk to us today. It's been fabulous.
Thank you all for having me.
Thank you.
Great to have you on the podcast.
Really wonderful.
If you want to know more about Miguel and his work, you can visit his website, miguelalejandro.art, or his Instagram page, love.entirely.
Sweet. And maybe just like one last thing just to share. For everybody listening inside of this insane time that we're living through, I'm just really encouraging all of us to understand the conditions, to accept that change, to like really see it, to like not avoid it, to really, really see what's happening, so that then we can tap into our power, so that we can change them. So do not despair. Like, look at things and move from a place of empowerment as opposed to fear, which is what you all are doing with this podcast. So
we're trying.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Please take a moment to hit the like button, rate us, and review the show. It makes a big difference in helping us reach more listeners.
Your tax-deductible donations make this podcast possible. Please support us at internationalarrivals.org.